Have you seen it yet? All episodes of the new Daredevil Born Again show are now streaming on Disney+. So there's no better time to talk about Matt Murdock's training. Daredevil has been one of my favorite Marvel superheroes, ever since I saw him appear in that sweet crimson-shaded suit on the old late 90s Spider-Man cartoon series, while I sat at my parents' living room in my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pajamas on a sugary, cereal-fueled Saturday morning. So today I really want to break down the intense training that Matt put himself through to become Daredevil, what key areas he had to develop, the skills he mastered, and how he structured his training while juggling law school and later a legal career. So let's dive into how Matthew trained before putting on that sweet red cow with the horn. Becoming Daredevil isn't about being the biggest or the strongest or brawling with groups of thugs all at once. It's about being the most capable, the quickest to action, the most adaptable, navigating the city like a predator, and fighting with ruthless efficiency. His physical skill set is pretty specific, relying on poise, balance, and acrobatic skill. Explosive quick strikes, and effectively using his sonar-like ability to drop people before they even know they're being hunted. Though Charlie Cox's representation of Daredevil often gets into brawling type blow-for-blow fights, especially early in the series, the comic accurate version is usually shown to be more strategic, using precision and stealth over brute force. His fighting style is built around decisive action, striking before his enemies know he's there, which makes sense given his abilities. His heightened senses let him track opponents through sound, smell, and even heartbeats, allowing him to operate in darkness or from cover where he can't be seen. Unlike his enemies, he doesn't need a line of sight to strike. Let's start with a quick backstory. Matt grew up in Hell's Kitchen, New York, raised by his father, Jack Murdock, a washed-up boxer who instilled in him resilience and a sense of morality. As a child, Matt was blinded when he pushed a man out of the way of a speeding truck carrying radioactive chemicals, which splashed into his eyes. Though he lost his sight, the chemicals enhanced his remaining senses to superhuman levels, giving him radar-like spatial awareness, extraordinary hearing, and hyper-acute touch, smell, and taste. Matt first trained in boxing inspired by his father, developing powerful striking, sharp defensive reflexes, and the grit of a seasoned fighter. After his father was murdered for refusing to throw a fight, Matt vowed to seek justice. He was taken in by Stick, a blind master of martial arts and brutal leader of the Chaste, a group dedicated to battling the ninja clan known as the Hand. Stick trained him in ninjutsu, stealth tactics, and weapon combat, while forcing him to master acrobatics through relentless gymnastic training, making him as elusive and fluid as he was dangerous in combat. Driven by guilt, tragedy, and a fierce sense of justice, he became the man without fear. That nickname represented how Matt trained himself to become Daredevil. He conditioned himself to defy fear, weakness, and the vulnerability of being blind, forging himself into a fighter capable of using his heightened senses to dominate in aggressive, high-stakes combat with speed and precision. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the core physical traits Daredevil would need to train. While his sensory abilities set him apart as a unique hero, this video won't focus on how to develop your own sixth sense. If you'd like me to do that in the future, comment down below. Or go check out this video the Pioneer did, which goes into all that in great detail. Link is in the description below. But don't abandon me just yet, because I'll be focusing on the raw physical attributes Matt would develop to make the most of his extraordinary sensory abilities. And since he wasn't training with billionaire resources, we'll also look at how a struggling law student and young lawyer would have trained to become Daredevil with limited equipment and facilities, using only what he had access to in New York City. A blind man traversing rooftops and beating the hell out of people needs serious balance and coordination. Daredevil moves like a human projectile, vaulting, flipping, and rolling with the fluidity of a gymnast. His sonar ability is only useful because of his physical dexterity, moving quickly across narrow, uneven surfaces, effectively grabbing ledges, climbing, and skillfully wielding his billy clubs, either as weapons or a spring-loaded grappling hook. Matt could develop these abilities through multi-sensory proprioceptive training, which we can break into 3 key areas. This isn't an exhaustive list. There's only so deep I can go in one video. These cover some of the most practical methods for training proprioceptive movement. Both crawling and climbing builds dexterity and coordination between both sides of the body, while loading the hands, arms, and shoulder joints, providing critical sensory input for body awareness. Living in New York, Matt could frequent a local rock climbing gym. And yes, it is not completely out of place to see a blind man rock climb, or just climb on jungle gyms or trees in city parks. Crawling along beams or rooftop ledges would further sharpen his balance and brain-body connection. For stability training, this can be as simple as doing single leg squats and as complex as walking across a slack line. For upper body stability, exercises like suspended ring dips, ring push-ups, and muscle-ups force your body to stabilize against an unstable surface, challenging proprioception by demanding you maintain awareness of your body's position in space. Movement meditation practices like qigong and forms of yoga develop spatial awareness, crucial for a blind fighter, even one with heightened senses. Since Daredevil relies on reading micro movements and subtle shifts in his environment, this kind of training sharpens his ability to process sensory input without hesitation. Plus, mastering breath control would help him regulate heart rate under stress, keeping him calm and efficient in combat. Daredevil weaponizes his environment, attacking from blind angles, pun intended, using walls and tight spaces for momentum and outmaneuver opponents. Matt learned ninjutsu, stealth tactics, and honed his acrobatic skill early as a kid under Stick's brutal instruction. But his training with the Blind Psycho Master lasted only a couple of years, so he had to refine and expand those skills on his own. To maintain and improve this level of agility and mobility, he trained complex acrobatic routines, reactive movement patterns, and both classic and unconventional agility quickness drills. He also needs to build the necessary mobility and flexibility for his body to handle this. He trained conventional agility drills like lateral hurdle hops, reaction sprints, and change of direction footwork, but he also mixed in less common ones, balance work, and reactive dodging drills, designed to build instinctual, immediate movements. Since he can't rely on visual cues like a sighted fighter, he needs to react to air pressure shifts, sounds, and vibrations. And all this agility training would sharpen his footwork, spatial awareness, and directional control, allowing him to slip punches, dodge gunfire, and transition from sprint to flip to strike without breaking rhythm. While Matt integrated the stealth tactics he learned from Stick, he also developed a highly offensive, pressure-heavy fighting style. Relentless strikes, quick counters, and smooth grappling transitions. To become that kind of fighter, you need to build striking power and hand speed, not just to hit multiple targets quickly, but to hit hard enough to drop them. And he'd need to condition himself to sustain those bursts of explosive output across long fights. Functional strength is a loaded title. It really just means strength specific to the demands of the athlete. For Daredevil, that means being able to maneuver through an urban environment and subdue opponents using his body and tools alone. High volume bodyweight training, long climbing sessions, and elements of strongman training would help build the necessary musculature, strength endurance, and full body coordination he needs. Training like that develops the functional capacity to grapple with enemies, absorb and redirect force, and repeatedly move through his environment. These methods are also practical in the confines of New York City. Matt could use public parks for calisthenics, loaded carries, and even climbing training without raising suspicion or spending money. This training also builds resilience and durability, arguably some of Daredevil's most critical physical traits. Besides his Billy Club grappling hook, which would be exhausting to use repeatedly, he gets around on foot. If he needs to leave Hell's Kitchen and head downtown, there's no Devil Mobile to hop in. Instead, he'd take off on a dead sprint across rooftops, leaping ledge to ledge, vaulting obstacles, and swinging from buildings. And even when staying local in the kitchen, sprinting along rooftops for 25 blocks from 34th to 59th Street without super speed takes more than a little physical grit and stamina. I've gotten tired just walking that distance in the city. Particularly early on, Matt also didn't have access or financial means to the best protective high-tech armor devil suit or expensive recovery and injury preventative methods and tools. So he'd need to make himself physically durable through more conventional means. Hanging from climbing holds and statically holding heavy objects, like in strongman training, builds connective tissue strength and resilience, along with trunk stability, which helps prevent injury. High-rep bodyweight training also thickens joints and tendons, and mixing in targeted exercises like deep split squats and Jefferson curls reinforces hips, knees, and back, preventing injuries to these areas. Now, as we dig into what his training plan would look like, we need to remember that young Murdock doesn't have the luxury of an Alfred to cover for him while he trains for hours at a time and takes care of all those pesky life responsibilities like making meals, going on errands, and washing his tights. He also couldn't just abscond for days at a time, chalking it up to him being an eccentric billionaire. He wasn't going to get through law school if he didn't show up for class, and he wasn't going to make any money if he didn't meet with clients. So he'd need to meticulously plan his training. This 4 to 5 day plan is how Matt Murdock becomes Daredevil, with no high-tech gear, limited money, and a full schedule. It builds the strength, agility, endurance, and combat skill he'd need to prepare to survive street fights and scale rooftops. The training is structured to stack the right types of stress together, so he can recover, adapt, and keep improving, while still balancing law school and a demanding new career. For each day, you'll see the focus, the kind of place that he'd train, and the reasons behind the daily structure. Matt would start his week with strength and proprioceptive training. The focus is developing foundational strength and enhancing balance and body awareness, as I've already described. The training location would be a local park with access to benches, rails, and open spaces. Probably done very early in the morning to make sure there are fewer people around to spot the blind guy casually moving like a ninja. The rationale here is to alternate traditional strength work with proprioceptively demanding movements, since they don't compete. Pairing them saves time and lets him build strength while sharpening coordination, making the rest of the week flow better for recovery. For his warm-up, he'd start with dynamic stretches, focusing on full body mobility. Then he'd go into movement flow on uneven surfaces for another 5 minutes, doing things like lizard crawls, crab reach, and underswitch. For his main training, he'd start by alternating the following for 4 sets. Weighted step-ups, linear and lateral, 5 to 8 reps each leg, each direction. He'd use a sturdy bench or ledge, holding either a heavy backpack or sandbag, or a pair of dumbbells. He'd first do 5 to 8 reps of forward step-ups, then immediately follow that with 5 to 8 reps of lateral or side step-ups, and then switch and repeat on the other leg. Then he'd alternate this with beam crawling for 10 yards. He'd crawl along a narrow beam, low tree branch, or park railing to really dial in his balance, coordination, and dexterity. Next, he'd alternate the following for 3 sets. The first would be push-ups on rings for 10 to 20 reps. He'd use gymnastic rings hung from a pull-up bar or tree branch to challenge upper body stability. These could also be done wearing a weight vest. Then he'd do suspended ring dips for 8 to 12 reps. Then slackline walking or walking on a railing for 15 to 20 yards. If he had a slackline strung between trees, he'd go with that. If not, he'd walk quickly across the top of a railing or a narrow tree branch. He'd finish with this last block, alternating these 3 for 3 sets. Weighted pistol squats, 6 reps each side. Sometimes he'd do them on an uneven surface or on a tree branch or ledge to make them even more challenging in terms of balance and control. Rope climbing, 8 to 10 ascents. If he didn't have access to a rope, he'd sub with towel pull-ups, heavy uphill sled drag for 10 yards. He'd use a makeshift sled if he didn't own a small portable one. He'd keep his body low to the ground, almost in a crawling position, and drag it for a short distance using very heavy weight. This would be done to build raw strength, not conditioning. His cooldown would last about 10 minutes, targeting the legs, back, and shoulders. He'd use a mix of static and dynamic stretches, which would be absolutely essential for supporting all his explosive gymnastic movement and for staying injury-free. Day 2 focuses on recovery and enhancing resilience through cold exposure, martial arts technique, low-intensity aerobic work, and acrobatic mobility flow. Matt would train on rooftops in alleys or empty warehouses, spaces where he can move, climb, and practice unseen. This is a low CNS, high-skill day, placed after heavy strength work to consolidate technique, build flow, and actively recover for the training ahead. To start his day, or at least before his first training session, he'd sit in a cold tub or ice bath for 3 to 5 minutes. This would build tolerance to stress, both physiological and psychological, help him develop calm under pressure, and reduce systemic inflammation. Then for training, he'd start with a warm-up flow. 5 minutes of mobility-based movement, including deep squat holds, Cossack squats, wrist rolls, and hip openers. Then after that, he'd move into 3 minutes of ground flow work, crawling, rolling, and side-to-side movement transitions. He'd then spend about 20 to 30 minutes practicing martial arts technique, alternating between 2 things. First, solo stick fighting drills. He'd do 4 to 6 rounds of 2 minutes each, focusing on strikes and footwork patterns. And second, grappling drills like sprawls, rolls, and hip escapes. After that, he'd spend 30 to 60 minutes working on acrobatic and parkour style movements, sequencing them into fluid drills and alternating that with steady state running or rucking. Something like vault to balance walk, to precision jump, to handstand walk, and so on. He'd run through these 3 to 5 times at a moderate intensity, staying in a lower stress aerobic zone. In between those sequences, he'd go for 5 to 10 minute runs or rucks at a steady, moderate pace. And just to make things more awesome, he'd throw in some grappling hook simulator training by tossing a rope up to a balcony or fire escape. He'd finish the session with 15 to 20 minutes of focused mobility work. For hip mobility, long lunge holds, straddle stretches, and working towards the splits. For thoracic spine mobility, back bridges and thoracic rotations. And for shoulder health and grip, long hands from bars and skin the cat progressions. Day 3 targets agility, quickness, and mobility to sharpen evasive movement and fast directional changes. He'd also work on power and power endurance through short, intense bursts. A basketball court or open field would work well for this. Agility drills improve reaction time and coordination, key for his combat style, while power training builds the ability to hit hard and keep going. For his warm-up, he'd start with dynamic stretches, emphasizing hip and ankle mobility for about 5 minutes. Then he'd add in some lateral shuffles and high knees. For training, he'd begin with something to develop pure explosive ability, like depth drop into broad jumps, doing 4 sets of 3 jumps. Then he'd move into lateral hurdle hops, using something like big cones or chairs as hurdles. After that, he'd do something more specifically for foot quickness, like ladder drills or lateral shuffle cone drill. Then he'd move on to some less common drills. One would be a reaction-based sprint drill, where an audio cue triggers a sprint in a random direction. He'd also do reactive dodging drills. For this, he'd throw a tennis ball hard at a wall, then immediately dodge it as it flies back toward him. He could also do this same drill with a partner, someone who may know his secret, or someone who has no moral issue or question as to why a blind man would do such a thing. Then for power endurance, he'd start with a circuit. The circuit would look like this: rotational sandbag swings for 6 reps each side, then lateral rebound box jumps, 3 reps each side. Then he'd push or drag a heavy sled as quickly and explosively as possible for 10 seconds. Finally, to end the day, he'd go outside. if he wasn't already, and do 3 sets of heavy carries uphill for 40 meters and 3 sets of 20 meters of sled drags uphill, improvising with whatever he could, maybe putting a heavy object on a tarp or dragging a big tire with a rope. Day 4 would combine secondary strength training movements with striking practice while developing the lactic energy system through high output, medium duration efforts. This day is about learning how to fight with skill and fatigue, building the durability and sharpness Matt would eventually need when fights drag on or when he's outnumbered. He could do his strength training at home if he had the equipment and space, or at a local boxing or martial arts gym, where he'd also train his striking and finish with his lactic conditioning at the gym or nearby alleyways or rooftops. This is the longest training session of the week, so Matt might have to break this up into morning and evening sessions, or depending on how busy he was that week, he could add a 5th day of training and do some of this on that day. Placing this type of training after day 3 makes sense. Day 3 trains max speed and reactivity, but this session focuses on sustaining strength under fatigue. The strength work here is heavy but still submaximal. Grouping striking and lactic training on the same day works because both tax similar systems: energy, mental sharpness, and motor control under duress, making it a smart way to layer stress while keeping the overall training week balanced for recovery and adaptation. He'd start with 5 minutes of mobility circuits. Then he'd do 3 minutes of jump rope, 2 minutes at a light pace, and 1 minute at a faster tempo. For his strength training, he'd do heavier compound lifts, training more specifically for maximum strength than he did on day 1. But because of his tight schedule and the fact that he eventually needs to not only be strong, but sustain the same strength output repeatedly over long periods of time, he'd pair a lower body lift with an upper body lift and alternate between the two as many times as possible in a set time period, trying not to reduce the weight he uses for either lift. He'd set a timer for 6 to 10 minutes and go back and forth between heavy suitcase deadlifts or squats and floor presses or push presses, 3 reps each side, using 80 to 90% of his 1 rep max, or around a 7 to 8.5 RPE. Over time, he'd aim to increase the number of quality rounds within that time frame. Next up would be his striking work. He'd start with 2 to 3 rounds of shadow boxing, each 2 minutes, staying light on his feet and focus on rhythm and movement. Then he'd hit 5 rounds on the heavy bag. If he had a trusted partner or coach, he'd also hit pads or spar for 3 2-minute rounds. After that, it's time to build lactic capacity, the ability to sustain high intensity bursts repeatedly, high intensity intervals or circuits. He'd do 2 to 3 rounds of the following: sandbag over the shoulder throws, as many as possible in 30 seconds, jumping lunges, heavy punching bag flips or drags, and hill or stair sprints, 30 seconds on and 30 seconds off. Some weeks he might swap this with climbing. He'd head to a climbing gym or to the quiet parts of the city and do intervals of bouldering or short, powerful climbing routes with dynamic movements. To end the session, he'd do a breath hold bodyweight finisher, building muscular endurance, CO2 tolerance, and grit. First, as many push-ups as possible in a single breath, followed by a 60-second rest. Then bodyweight squats, same rule, 1 breath. Then pull-ups, 1 breath, max reps. He'd repeat this entire sequence for 2 to 3 rounds. But if his schedule allowed for a 5th training day that week, he might move this finisher to that day instead, making this session shorter and more focused. Finally, he'd cool down with 3 to 4 minutes of deep nasal breathing, lying on his back, inhaling for 4 seconds, and exhaling for 8. On the weeks he's not slammed with work, school, or otherwise, he'd include this 5th day of training. He could do most of this either at a home or in a park. He'd warm up again with 2 to 3 minutes of ground flow, then he'd do 5 to 10 minutes of breathing capacity practice, doing drills that made his breathing muscles stronger, help him learn how to control and regulate his breathing, and train breath holds. Once that's finished, he'd do the breath hold bodyweight rounds that I described for day 4. Then he'd do rounds alternating some easy martial arts technique flow, with exercises that make his body more durable, building connective tissue resilience, joint integrity, and end range strength. This would be 3 to 6 rounds of striking flow practice for 1 to 2 minutes, Jefferson curls with light dumbbells, weapons flow practice for 1 to 2 minutes, archer ring rows or L-sits with rings, grappling flow practice for 1 to 2 minutes, and Nordic hamstring curl progressions for 5 to 8 reps. Finally, he'd end with some form of movement meditation like we discussed earlier, forms of yoga or something like Qigong. So that's a full week of training for a young Matt Murdock. It's the kind of training that doesn't just build physical resilience, it helps maintain it during chaos. On busy weeks, Matt would stick to the 4-day structure, but on less stressful weeks, he could add day 5 to add more combat skill practice and durability training, prioritizing recovery and adaptation. You may have noticed that I didn't go into as much detail as to the specifics of his fighting training compared to past videos on other superheroes. But if you'd like a future video on Daredevil, diving deeper into that, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video and it gave you some new ideas for your own training or inspire you to try something new, possibly wearing a blindfold, leave a like, share it, and drop a comment down below. And I'll see you next time they shine my light in the sky.